The Grizzlies have stunned the NBA by firing head coach Taylor Jenkins with barely any games left before the playoffs. Even more unexpected is his replacement, Tuomas Iisalo, a Finnish coach who just 3 years ago was coaching in a third-tier European league. Most Americans don't know him at all. Who? But as a European, I've been following his rapid journey to the NBA, and there's already plenty of confusion around him. Some folks are blaming Iisalo for a Grizzlies offense that Ja Morant hated, when in reality, it's not even his preferred playstyle. Let's cut through the misconceptions and see why Memphis made this bold move. On the surface, it's odd to ditch a coach when your record is good enough for a top 5 seed in the West. Typically, teams wait until the offseason before pulling the trigger, but Memphis has been dropping hints of dissatisfaction with Jenkins for a while now. They fired multiple assistants last offseason, quietly bringing in new faces like Iisalo. Even though the Grizzlies are 44-32, they've gone 8-14 since the All-Star break and have a brutal season record of 11-23 against teams above 500. On defense, they've been getting torched, giving up far too many threes and finishing near the bottom in opponent points per game. Their offense isn't perfect either. Memphis barely runs pick and roll, which is a deal breaker come playoff time, and Ja Morant publicly admitted he despises the system. Those issues all piled up quickly, leaving Jenkins on thin ice. Still, the timing raises eyebrows. It's one thing to lose patience with a coach in January, but in late March, just days from the postseason, that screams a sense of urgency. From what I've gathered, the Grizzlies also feared losing Iisalo entirely. He had apparently drawn attention from other NBA teams for a possible head coaching gig. If Memphis was already sour on Jenkins and a promising coach like Iisalo was at risk of jumping ship, the front office had every incentive to act fast, thus the sudden firing. So that brings us to the million-dollar question. Who is Tuomas Iisalo and what does he actually bring to the table? The first big misconception is that he's the guy behind Memphis's motion-heavy offense that Morant can't stand. Some top analysts have also said this, for example.
Ja supposedly in that piece from The Athletic talked about how he didn't like the offense. I mean, the irony of this is that the Finnish guy now that's the new head coach, this was part of the offense that he brought from Europe.
But anyone who's actually followed Iisalo's career knows that's backwards. In Europe, he was famous for building potent pick-and-roll offenses. In fact, this current Grizzlies idea of offense comes from Noah LaRoche, who was the architect behind a Division III St. Joseph's College a few years ago. He was hired alongside Iisalo this offseason and now got let go together with Jenkins. Now that Tuomas Iisalo is the head coach, expect a major shift in how the Grizzlies run their half-court sets. If you look at Iisalo's track record, it's clear why the Grizzlies really wanted him. He took over teams with low budgets and losing records, but turned them into champions in shockingly little time. At Bonn in Germany, he arrived in 2021 after the club finished 13th, then immediately notched a 26-8 season, winning the Coach of the Year. Next year, Bonn went 32-2, finished as the runner-up in the German league, and also won the Basketball Champions League. After that, he joined a Paris squad in the Eurocup, guided them to the Eurocup trophy, and posted an astounding 127.1 offensive rating, best in the world at any level that season. These weren't some fluke achievements. This is a pattern at every stop. He rolls in, organizes the team with an intense up-tempo system, and racks up wins. Iisalo's overarching philosophy relies on 3 core ideas: pushing pace, leaning heavily on a lead ball handler, and running advanced screening actions to maximize pick-and-roll efficiency. His squads are known to sprint the floor every possession, and he's rotating players aggressively to keep legs fresh. He wants a star guard or 2 who can dictate the flow, punish mismatches, and keep defenders off balance with various screening tactics, like the Varejao screen, constantly adjusting angles to confuse defenders, Gortat screen sealing off the dropping big, and ghost screens faking picks to cause defensive confusion. All of that is basically the polar opposite of what sets Memphis was using. A perimeter lacking motion-based approach that minimized pick and roll and screen actions. Naturally, as an assistant, Iisalo could only push so hard. Some of his ideas like ramping up the pace did start to appear. Memphis's pace rose from around 16th last year to nearly the top of the league this year, in part due to Iisalo's urging for more transition action. But the pick and roll usage remains remained painfully low, dead last in ball handler frequency per advanced stats, which always seemed odd to me with a guard as dynamic and athletic as Ja Morant. Meanwhile, fans saw Morant's frustration grow, culminating in rumors that the guard felt underused in half-court sets. Blaming Iisalo for that is missing the forest for the trees. The broader staff decided on a scheme that arguably neglected Morant's strengths. If anything, Iisalo is known for loving a star ball handler, so there's every reason to believe that Memphis can rectify that problem now. On the defensive side, the Grizzlies have been a sieve, allowing over 117 points a game, 25th in the league, and ranking near the bottom in limiting three-pointers. Iisalo's approach might help here too, although it won't be an overnight fix. He typically demands players to defend man-to-man without constantly overhelping, an issue that's hurt Memphis by leaving shooters open on the perimeter. His system requires strong athleticism, quick closeouts, and frequent rotation to keep the energy high. Granted, implementing a new defensive scheme right before the playoffs is challenging, but in the long run, it could solve the very issues that sank Jenkins. One aspect that might surprise NBA players is Iisalo's focus on building chemistry and accountability. In Europe, especially at smaller clubs, he got used to being brutally honest. He would also ban cell phones at team facilities and shuffle roommates during away trips to build chemistry in forced ways. By all accounts, it worked wonders at places like Bonn, forging a cohesive culture that let them overachieve. That culture, with many of these same core players, then carried over to Paris. Just look at their pre-game ritual.
Rolling, 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 rolling,
But the NBA is a different beast with star personalities that are used to being spoiled. You can look at how Iisalo dealt with strong, sometimes difficult personalities in Germany, guys who initially hated his phone ban but later said it was the key to building trust. TJ Shorts, his star guard in Bonn, once admitted he thought it was the dumbest thing ever, only to realize it was the best rule for bonding. That might be exactly the push that the Grizzlies need. A more unified approach, fewer distractions, and consistent intensity. If Morant or JJJ see that it translates to wins, they might embrace it fully. I think for the fans too, it'll be fascinating to watch a top 15 player being held accountable by a foreign coach on defense and discipline. Of course, stepping in right before the playoffs is a massive challenge. The Western Conference is stacked with lethal offenses. Overhauling the entire system in a couple of weeks might not yield immediate results, and if Memphis goes out early, fans might question the timing. But the front office is presumably looking beyond a single playoff run. If they've pinned their hopes on Iisalo as a long-term solution, giving him the head coach job now ensures he can start laying the foundation right away. In an ideal scenario, the Grizzlies get a jump start on the next season while still being dangerous in the current postseason. In short, the Grizzlies might look crazy for dismissing a playoff-bound coach in Taylor Jenkins, but the writing's been on the wall. They want a different defensive identity, they want Morant to have a more pick-and-roll friendly offense, and they want a culture that fosters full accountability. Tuomas Iisalo checks every box. For a Memphis squad that's been stuck in some weird limbo between real contender and pretender, that tough love might be exactly what they need. The rest of the roster may also need time to adapt to a new coaching voice. But if we've learned anything from Iisalo's rapid transformations of Bonn or Paris, he doesn't need a full offseason to start making real changes. But what do you think? Does handling the keys to a European rookie coach with only a few games left make sense, or is it a gamble that might blow up in Memphis's face? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe for more NBA takes through an overseas lens, and I'll see you in the next one.